Chapter 2. After passing through the school's metal detectors, Jonathan quickly looked around to get a feel for the general vibe. His senses were heightened from that morning's encounter, and he wanted to make sure that everything was normal. If the other boys had recognized him at the store, he could be ambushed. Everything seemed fine, though, as he observed the usual hustle of bodies and voices mingling before classes began. Jonathan was about to head down the hallway when to his side he heard someone approaching. With cautious agility, Jonathan turned around to find one of his friends, Jake, coming up to him. "Hey, J1, how's it going today?" "J2, pretty good," Jonathan responded. The two had been friends since childhood. "Headed to class?" Jake asked. They had first period together. "Nah, gotta report in to Big Tom real quick." Jake nodded. "Cool, catch you later then." "Do we need to meet later on and discuss business?" he asked, lowering his tone so near all the security guards around the metal detectors. Not that they really cared, but they didn't need to know either. "Probably a short one, just to check on collections and make sure everyone's territory is going all right," Jonathan replied. Jake nodded and headed off for class. Jonathan turned in another direction, toward room 60. No teacher went in that room. No student went in unbidden. By popular myth, Big Tom never left the room and kept a loaded spring gun, a double-barreled shotgun with the trigger attached to the door by a spring, ready for the unwelcome. Jonathan knew there was no spring gun, but Big Tom encouraged the rumors because fear was useful. Jonathan knocked on the door quietly.
"Who is it?"
Someone grunted behind the door. A low window opened in the door, and two mean-looking, dull blue eyes looked out. "Jonathan Smith," he replied. Deadbolts rattled, and the door opened.
"To what do I owe the pleasure?" Big Tom asked sarcastically, settling his massive body into a large desk chair. He was tall and extremely strong, his eyes partnered up with a face comprised of thick jowls, bushy eyebrows, and close-cropped, straight brown hair. He was wearing a large sport jersey and jeans. Tattoos could be seen peeking out from the sleeves of his shirt. He was much older than a typical student, having dropped out over a decade before, without ever actually leaving. "I need to report a couple of firsts who were skimming." Big Tom frowned. "Who were they?"
"They aren't mine, so I don't know their names, but they work J Street. I can recognize them if you have any pictures in your files." Big Tom pulled out a smartphone and flicked through a series of pictures with collection routes detailed on them. Finding the one he wanted, he tapped on the photo and showed it to Jonathan.
"These two?"
"That's them," Jonathan nodded, glad he'd gotten that closer look.
"That's Steve's route. I'll have a few words with him, and then probably with these two as well. We've had other problems with them before on a drug detail. Shouldn't happen again."
Jonathan nodded. "I understand."
"Good. Anything else? We aren't reporting today, are we? Last we talked, I thought everything was going pretty well. I've even had a few people up the Tri-60 ladder mention your route's profits."
"Nope, my area comes up next week for review," Jonathan replied, a quick rush of fear going through him. He didn't want to get promoted again. He secretly had hopes after high school of somehow escaping the life, but the noose was tightening quickly. He'd already done far more than he'd ever wanted to do in the name of fitting in, and he was in so deep he didn't know how he'd ever get out. His mother's fears were becoming real possibilities.
"See you then,"
Big Tom said dismissively, scooting his chair back behind his desk. Jonathan nodded as he walked out. Class had already started long before Jonathan reached the classroom, so he entered quietly and found a seat near the back. The teacher scarcely made note of his entrance and continued his mumbled, drone-like lecture on basic algebra. Even before Jonathan sat down, his mind was rushing through various advanced texts he had read on the subject. By the time he was in his chair, he could probably have taught a college course on the subject.
He barely paid attention through the remainder of class, content to seem outwardly as disengaged as the rest of the students. 6 painful periods and a short 45-minute lunch later, Jonathan had a quick meeting with his second tiers, including Jake. To his great relief, everything seemed to be working smoothly, and there was nothing requiring his immediate attention. He left the school shortly thereafter, and headed for his home away from home, his palace of solace, his fortress of solitude, the public library. It was only a short bus ride down from the school, but one interruption nearly ruined the experience entirely.